Media and the public opinion. Everybody acts like the media influences the way that we think. You'll hear people say, oh, the liberal news media, or oh, that Fox News is just brainwashing people. That is not the case. What the media does to influence our opinion more than anything is tell us what we should be thinking about. Media is they are the gatekeepers. They tell us what's important, and by telling us what's important, they're setting the public agenda. Let's take NSA surveillance, for example. You just did a current event on that. The media has told us that's important. The media has exaggerated, and I'm not saying that what has been covered is not true, but the media has exaggerated what the NSA does to collect data and is exaggerated on information about domestic surveillance. They don't tell us the whole picture, but they want to get the public riled up and excited because the media wants to get more hits on an internet page, more news magazines purchased, or they want more viewership. So they're telling us what's important, and by telling us what's the American people what's important, they are in turn shaping what policymakers have to focus on. Because if the people are upset about the NSA surveillance programs, what must happen? They have to be changed. The media is also watchdogs. They protect us from government corruption. They protect us from business corruption. They do this by participating in investigative journalism. By investigating any kind of government harmful actions, they're exposing that, and they're making the people hold politicians accountable for their actions. Okay. Another way that the media can shape public opinion is the way that they cover a campaign. When the media covers a campaign, they focus on horse race coverage. Horse race coverage is a phenomenon where the media is going to report on the candidate's position in the polls as opposed to the issues that the candidate supports. So the media is reporting to the public who is in the lead in public approval ratings rather than what those people are about. And if you can see right here, that's exactly what this particular graph shows. Is that almost 5% of the time, the media focuses on the public record or the personal image of the politician. About 20% of the time does the media focus on the politician's position on the policies, but over half of the coverage during campaigns is about who is in the lead. So you go back to 2016, you predict it's going to be Clinton and Chris Christie. If those are your two candidates, every day all you're going to hear from broadcast media, Brian Williams on NBC, or Rachel Maddow on CNN, you're going to be hearing who is in the lead, not necessarily what they're about, which makes us not really understand the issues. Okay, we're going to skip that. Okay. Reporting the news. Okay. All right. The news, and it's important to know this, is profit driven. Remember those chains or those conglomerates? Those people who own a bunch of different types of media, whether it's a news magazine and newspapers and television networks and book publishing companies. All of those people want, the owners of those conglomerates need to make a dollar. How they make a dollar is what they report on. Do they get viewership? Do people want to tune into Fox News? Do people want to tune into CNN? Do people want to watch Brian Williams at 7 o'clock, or do they want to watch whoever does the news on CBS at 6 o'clock? Now, how do you make a profit in television? How do you make a profit on the internet? You sell advertising. How do you sell advertising? The way that you sell advertising in the newspaper, the internet, and on television is you have to prove to your potential customers that a lot of people view your site, your television news network, or your newspaper. And you have statistics that you can take to potential customers to show them how many people actually view or use your media. And then they will buy ads from you. The more people that read your newspaper or hit your website, the more you can charge for your ads and the more money you're going to make. Okay. Regular beats. Reporting the news, you have to talk about regular beats. Journalists have regular beats. That means certain journalists are assigned to certain areas of government or certain cities or certain types of policy. So like you'll have your foreign policy correspondent. Their regular beat would be to cover the United States foreign relations. You'd have your White House correspondent. Their regular beat is to cover what happens in the White House. You'll have your congressional correspondent. That's what they're going to cover is Congress. And one of my favorite correspondents is Nina Totenberg, and her regular beat is the Supreme Court. All right, press conferences. This is one way that the media can cover what's going on in government. Now, press conferences are not as common as they used to be. Press conferences can get politicians into trouble because what a press conference involves is a politician standing behind a podium and reporters asking them questions on the fly. Now, a politician can kind of prepare for what to say in a press conference, but for the most part, they have to extemporaneously or off the cuff answer at a press conference. And you know from reading Hardball, the press is the enemy. So if you slip up and say one wrong thing in that press conference, the media is going to blow it up. So politicians tend to avoid those. Trial balloons. Trial balloons, and this relates to this cartoon somewhat. I had a hard time finding an image for trial balloons, but Governor Blanco was governor of Louisiana during Hurricane Katrina, and this shows her like flying in the air holding a couple of trial balloons. Now what a trial balloon is an idea that a politician leaks to the press, and they want the press to report on that idea so they can measure public opinion of that idea or policy. Now, I can best explain a trial balloon by telling you how it works, giving you an example of how it works. So let's say, in this case, you're Governor Blanco. You float the idea of increasing a cigarette tax. You kind of leak that idea to the people of Louisiana, and you say, to a journalist, well, I'm thinking about collecting more money by imposing a cigarette tax on the state of Louisiana. And then the reporter goes and reports that and says, sources closest to government or Governor Blanco have said that they are probably going to instill a cigarette tax or impose a cigarette tax. And if the people are like, oh my God, that's the worst idea ever, then the governor knows not to go ahead with that particular policy. Or if Obama were to say to a reporter, well, we're thinking about blowing up Iran. And then the reporter goes back, say to the Washington Post, and says, well, Obama said he isn't opposed to blowing up Iran. And then they run a story about that, and the American people freak out. They're not down with that idea. Then Obama knows he can change his position on that policy. Sound bites. Most of what you hear in the news is sound bites. The thing about sound bites is that it's a quick snippet of information. It's a short video clip of approximately 10 seconds. Typically, They are all that is shown from a politician's speech on the nightly television news, because the nightly television news, especially broadcast news, spends about 1.5 to 2 minutes on their news stories. So you really can't, the sound bites are about actually just getting a brief idea of what the politician is about without covering it in depth. Starting like in the 1960s, the news used to cover what a politician said for about 45 seconds. Now sound bites have gotten even smaller to almost 7.8 seconds. Now, like I said, the problem with this is that now politicians have to work to build carefully crafted speeches to make sure that every line cannot be taken out of context of what they said. Sensational images. The media is going to focus on any image that is going to attract a viewer within 1.3 seconds. So they're going to put any kind of any graphic that quickly catches our attention, because as we're flipping through the channels of the television, we're going to stop at the most intriguing image. So there is an increased reliance on getting the best picture or the best image possible. All right, talking heads, not the band. Though none of y'all probably know the band, so I don't even know why I said that. A talking head is a shot of a person's face talking directly into the camera. This is visually unappealing. So there's very rarely, it's boring. Viewers switch channels if they see this. So again, like I said, instead of watching Dan Rather talk to George Bush, or instead of, because I don't know why I thought of Dan Rather and George Bush, but instead of watching those two talk, or Matt Lauer and Obama, instead of watching them talk for an hour, they're just going to show snippets of that interview. So again, avoiding in-depth reporting. Bias in the news. When you're talking about bias in the news, there are two things that you need to know. You have to recognize bias. That's something that we've been working on with the current events. You have to understand, is the person writing the story anti-Democrat? Is the person writing the story anti-Republican? So you can understand what that information is going to be. So you can have your own opinion while considering theirs. But to be honest with you, a lot of people use the idea of selective exposure. As a viewer, you're only going to choose the news that matches your ideology. So you're only exposing yourself to news that is going to reiterate what you think. Selective perception. So let's see, even if you have a very unbiased news story, it's right there in the middle. It just tells both sides of the story. It tells you the Republican side and it tells you the Democrat side. If you're liberal, you're going to perceive that story through a liberal lens. If you're conservative, you're going to perceive that information through a conservative lens. So the news, even if you put unbiased information out there, we naturally are going to perceive it through our ideological lens.